Good morning. Wonderful to have everyone. In particular, I want to welcome Professor Richard Wong from Hong Kong University, our partner in this. And of course, Li Cheng, where are you? Hey, Li Cheng, great to work together with you again in Hong Kong. A Society Hong Kong Center is very, very honored to be a part of this event. The other co-convener, shall I say, of this event, besides Professor Li Cheng and myself, is John Thornton. Since he's not yet here, he's getting off the plane. I just got off the plane from a 25-hour flight from Honduras. And John, I think, coming in from Florida or New York City. So since he's not here, I can say a lot of things about him. John and I used to serve on the A Society Global Board together 25 years ago in New York City. And eventually he left and went to Brookings, and he became the chair of Brookings. I stayed on at the A Society, and I became the chair of A Society globally. And then when I retired from the chairmanship, I told John, I said, John, I need you. Please come back. And I need you in this turbulent time, to manage the organization in a way that can hopefully be a continue to be a contributory to the dialogue across the Trans-Pacific. But also, there's a lot of issues that really faces all of us that really needs leadership, and I think John is a wonderful person for that. Since I'm the only one of the three, whatever you call it, Li Cheng, co-convener, whatever, that is really from Hong Kong. So let me just say a word about Hong Kong. I have Bert here. Hong Kong is never allowed before 1997 to talk politics. International, domestic, no politics. I remember a friend of mine whose father and my late father are good friends. He talked politics in the 1970s. And the father came under pressure from the government. You want to continue to do business in Hong Kong? Get your son the hell out of here. And the son was basically thrown out for 20-some years until after 1997, at which time he returned to Hong Kong. So given that background, Hong Kong is a place where politics is not allowed. And as a result, we have very few really knowledgeable experts in this town on the subject, and that includes international relations. I used to be so ashamed when I have to share the podium with other Hong Kong fellow, usually professors, I'm sorry to say this, Richard, in international forum. I'm so embarrassed by the quality coming from Hong Kong. So thank you, Li Cheng, for moving here. I think that, sorry to say, it's a low base, but nonetheless, Li Cheng has uplifted the standard of international understanding by a long shot. So we are on the right track. So stay here, Bert. I think Li Cheng made a great decision, and I'm very happy that he can be here. It's not just the knowledge. It is not just the expertise, but also the connection, the convening power. I think it is also very, very important. Today we're here because of, in memory of two gentlemen. Both of them have had long relationship with the Asia Society. I met both of them in various occasions, but including the Asia Society, and that is Jeff Bader and David Dollar. In particular, I know Jeff for perhaps 30-some years. We have been good friends for a long time. And the last time I saw him was July 9th last year, when I was in Los Angeles with my wife, and I called him up and said, hey, Jeff, why don't you and Rohini come for breakfast before our flight out? And so instead, he hosted me. That was, by the way, the only time that Jeff has hosted me. I'm so honored that before his untimely death, I would have the opportunity to be hosted by Jeff and Rohini. Anyway, we talk a lot about what's going on in U.S.-China relations. And one of them is the following. Just a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, somebody said to me, isn't Nick Burns doing a great job as ambassador in Beijing? Now, I know Nick, though not well. I didn't think that Nick Burns is allowed to do anything in Beijing. So how can he do a good job or a bad job? And the reason is this. And the reason is because the Chinese ambassador to the United States is not allowed to do anything either. And Jeff Bader, one of the last things he said to me on July 9th of last year was his phone call to another old friend of ours, Kurt Campbell. Kurt used to come here every year, every other year when he was with CSIS, bringing the Young Turks, as they call it in those days. And Susan Rice was one of those, second on the second row, never say a word, but eventually becoming the National Security Advisor. God save America. And so Jeff was telling me how he called up Kurt and said, Kurt, whatever your view is about China, you have to talk to those people. You cannot just bar the Chinese ambassador in Washington and not let him see anybody or talk to anyone. And of course, Kurt listened, I'm sure, gentlemanly, said nothing, put down the phone. Continue, no more direct connection at that time between Ambassador Qin Gang of China and the rest of the establishment in Washington, D.C. 4 days ago, I was in Philadelphia, spending the whole day with Bob Gates, and joining us for dinner was Ambassador Xie Feng, who used to be in Hong Kong. And Xie Feng and I go back a long way, almost 30 years. And is he doing a good job? My answer is Nick Burns doing a good job? Both of them are not allowed, basically, to do much in terms of direct communications. Such is the position, such is the opportunity that organizations such as the Asia Society, such as Hong Kong University, such as CCCW, private entities that can convene these times where we can have knowledgeable individuals and have a real, honest discussion. And without discussion, misunderstanding will continue, and it will not be good for anybody. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome all of you to this event. I'm sure we'll be having a wonderful day today. For those of you who sign up for lunch, it's waiting for you over here. We'll move the chairs out later. And then this afternoon also there is a private discussion for which I very much look forward to it. So with that, may I invite are you still the provost of Hong Kong University, Professor Richard Wong, my old friend, to come on to the stage to say a few words. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Richard Wong.
Ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Ronnie, for inviting me to be embarrassed. Ambassador Choi, Mr. John Thornton, Mr. Ronnie Chan, Professor Li Chen, distinguished fellows and honorable guests. I'm delighted to be here today. It is always good to be back at the Asia Society Hong Kong, and thank you, Ronnie, for hosting us in this wonderful venue. On behalf of the President, Zhang Xiang of the University of Hong Kong, I want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to two individuals who have had larger-than-life effects on the Sino-American relationship. Dr. Jeffery Bader and the Senior Director of East Asian Affairs of the National Security Council during the Obama administration. And to many of his Brookings colleagues, Jeff is best known for being the inaugural director of the John Thornton China Center. And in 1977, he was asked to serve amongst the trailblazers instrumental in crafting Washington, D.C.'s approach to China, which had just started to open itself to the world at large. What followed was over 4 decades of visits, trips, and discussions with Chinese counterparts that made possible and enriched accurate assessments of the political and economic trajectory of China. In particular, Bader served as Deputy Consul General here in Hong Kong in the 1990s. Dr. David Dollar was a renowned economist and scholar who served as a senior fellow at the John Thornton Center at Brookings. And after overseeing China and Mongolia for the World Bank, David served as top official for the Treasury Department to China between 2009 and 2013. and his well-known Dollar and Cents podcast uniquely fuses his personal stories, incisive insights, and compassionate understanding of how economics affects the lives of ordinary people. David's popularity as both an academic and public intellectual is a true statement of his efforts in promoting public understanding of economics. While Jeff and David are no longer with us, their inspirational presence endures. And I'd like us to take a moment to pause and reflect on how we can carry their legacies forward in a manner that reflects what they cared most deeply about. That is, ensuring that the two largest economies in the world can try to get along, and that we can work together to advance the interests of not just two peoples, but of humanity at large. I am proud to say that the University of Hong Kong has stepped up to become a leader in cooperation and collaboration. Since its founding in 1911, the university has consistently endeavored to promote academic and educational exchange not only within our region, but also across the Pacific and beyond. Our partnerships encourages various forms of collaboration, including student exchanges, joint research projects, and faculty visit programs. It is the university's mission to serve as a focal point of intellectual and academic endeavors in Hong Kong and Greater Asia, and act as a gateway and forum for scholarship with the rest of the world. In recent years, the university has also been at the forefront of promoting interdisciplinary research and education through initiatives such as the interdisciplinary research clusters. Hong Kong U encourages collaboration between faculty members from various disciplines to tackle complex societal challenges by nurturing existing partnerships and forging new relationships. Hong Kong U aims to broaden its impact and contribute to the advancement of higher education and research on a global scale. As the world's most international university in terms of student composition, Hong Kong U has always been committed to drawing the best students and scholars from afar, while offering local students and faculties the opportunity to broaden their international horizons, very much in deficit, as according to Ronnie. And as one of the most international university in terms of student composition, 50% of our students today come from outside Hong Kong, and they represent 95 countries. Hong Kong U has always been committed to attracting these students from afar, and to find today we are reconnecting with the world, hosting global events, and finding our place in a rapidly changing world. Throughout the history, our university have responded to the needs of their times, so as we have been for over a century. The University of Hong Kong is part of this global movement, both as a reflection of these shifting trends and as a leader that is driving hope, peace, and progress. Many of our international collaborations are topics at the center on contemporary China in the world. At Hong Kong U has dedicated itself to tackling with its exceptional roster of fellows, academics, and soon pre-docs and postdoc researchers, under the able leadership of Professor Li Chen, with insights and advice from trusted friends and reputed scholars from both China and the United States, including many participating in our program today. The center is most certainly in safe hands. I'm sure that if Jeff and David were here today with us, they would be delighted to see their friends' perseverance of optimism in this work. Hong Kong U and Hong Kong are uniquely positioned given our recognized positions at the crossroads of East and West. There has never been more urgency for a global perspective than there is today, especially amid rising geopolitical tensions. Hong Kong U seeks to play a role in addressing pressing global issues through our research and our leadership, and we are more than just a university in Asia. We strive to be a university to the world. We aspire to leverage our home city crucial strengths to continue play host to friends and those who have joined us from near and afar, and to partake in vigorous organic debates over important issues. We may not always see eye to eye, but it is thus all the more important that we understand why that is the case and come to find paths forward. These days, university campus are embroiled in controversy. Young students find it difficult to be able to tolerate different viewpoints, but we try that this attitude of openness, of being tolerant to other viewpoints will continue to thrive at our university, and through our collaboration with the Asia Society, we hope we will be able to bridge gaps that should not have been there in the best of circumstances. Today's conference provides all of you with the opportunity to make sense of the macroeconomic, security, and geopolitical forces shaping our world. I have full confidence that this is merely the beginning of a long series of continuous discussions and conversations to come, and thank you for having the university being part of this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronnie, for hosting us in this fantastic venue, for your very thoughtful, inspiring opening remark, and for your overly generous words about me. And also thank you so much, Richard, the Provost Wang, for your great speech, and for taking the time to be with us today. I know that you need to go back to Hong Kong U for another major conference there. I already see how well your vision of educational exchanges is becoming to fruition at Hong Kong U. Welcome everyone to the Trans-Pacific Legacy Conferences. I'm Li Chen, professor in the Department of Politics and Public Administration, and the director of the newly founded Center on Contemporary China and the World, known as the CCCW. Together with the Asia Society Hong Kong and the colleagues from the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C., we are here today to honor Dr. Jeffery Bader and Dr. David Dollar. I'm privileged to have strong ties with Asia Society Hong Kong and the Brookings Institution, in addition to my work at the CCCW. These are the three host institutions. I'm really privileged to be part of these three institutions. And thanks for Ronnie, I became a scholar in residence of Asia Society Hong Kong as soon as I arrived in Hong Kong last July. And prior to that, I worked at the Brookings for 17 years and remained a non-resident senior fellow there. The opportunity to work closely with Jeff and David and become like-minded friends remains one of the most treasured memories of my Brookings years. Jeff and Bader are two legendary scholars and practitioners who dedicated their careers to improving and advancing diplomatic and economic relations between China and the United States, making outstanding contribution to the field of China studies. They have influenced and inspired many people, and indeed, many generations across the Pacific and beyond. The fact that we have been able to assemble so many leading scholars, prominent diplomats, and dear friends here in Hong Kong, some of whom have traveled all the way from the United States, mainland, and elsewhere, is a testimony to the strength and endurance of Jeff and Bader's influence on the lives of so many friends and colleagues. Thank you, distinguished scholars, speakers, for attending today's memorial conference to honor Jeff and David, our friends, colleagues, and mentors. I'm sure that you will hear many personal anecdotes about Jeff and David throughout the day. But in these next few minutes, let's watch a special video in which we have put together some photos of Jeff and David. Particularly, I want to give special thanks to two remarkable ladies, Rohini the wife of Jeff, and Paige, the wife of David. They have always been supportive of their loved ones and are generous to share their cherished memories with us. Right now, they are both online watching the live stream of the program. I would like to ask the audience to join me in a round of applause to convey our heartfelt gratitude to them for being the closest companions and partners in their husband's lifelong journey to make the world more peaceful, prosperous over the past few decades. What a beautifully moving video. Once again, thank you, Rohini and Paige, for sharing these vivid photos with us. These slides highlight Jeff's and David's love for you, their friendship with many of us in the room, their service and the dedication to their beloved country, and their humanity and the great care about the world's most important bilateral relationship. As I watched the video just compiled by my very talented staff very late last night, I was once again profoundly inspired by their Trans-Pacific legacy, the very theme of this conference. Most specifically, I'm moved to some of the great characteristics of these two men: a deep moral foundation, independent consciousness, sustaining optimism, and clear-eyed pragmatism, all of which are essential for peace in the Asia-Pacific region. Jeff and John Thornton recruited me to Brookings when the Center on China there was first established in 2006. Almost immediately, Jeff and I became friends, close friends, probably partly because of our personalities, probably because of our respective hardship in our early life. He was my mentor, and I was his junior colleague. Our friendship and trust never changed or diminished. 3 days before his passing, October 19, 2023, Jeff emailed me and continued to discuss our collaborative work. Among so many of my memories of Jeff, I remember most vividly what he said to me sometimes in 2016. Jeff told me, he always called me Cheng Li. He said, Cheng Li, we're no longer the mainstream approach to U.S.-China relations in Washington thinking about the bilateral relationship. But this will make our work even more important. A year earlier, in June 2015, in his monograph entitled Changing China Policy, Are We in Search of Enemies? Published by Brookings, Jeff wrote, I quote, East Asia has avoided major military conflicts since the 1970s. After the United States fought 3 wars during the preceding 4 decades, originally in East Asia, with 250,000 American lives lost. This is no small achievement. We're, of course, also aware about the many Asians also died during these wars. In Jeff's view, abandoning the engagement policy, especially people-to-people contacts between the United States and China, enhanced the risk of war in the region. David and I had similar conversations, especially the one he and I had during lunch in Bethesda a few days before I moved to Hong Kong last June. David introduced me to many of his economic friends in Hong Kong and the Great Bay Area, especially Dr. Wang Tao, and who is with us in the room and will speak next hour. Over the past few months, I have had many meetings with Dr. Wang Tao, and she has spoken at many CCCW seminars, including our inaugural launch conference last December. David, thanks for your introduction. David shared with me once that one of the things that disappointed and surprised him the most is about the conversation regarding Chinese economy or American economy was that the people had lost the idea that humans are supposed to help one another when possible. That is not to say that Jeff and David saw the relationship through rose-colored glasses. They possessed a rare quality, the ability to see the world through both hopeful and realistic lenses. While they are strong advocates for optimism, they are also acutely aware of the complexities and the challenges. I want to finish by sharing with you a quote that was one of David's favorites by early 20th century Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci. Here's the quote: "I'm a pessimist because of intelligence, but I'm an optimist because of will." Especially in time like this, marked by conflict, upheaval, and uncertainty, the future can look very dark. It is easy to get lost in pessimistic and despair. So it is especially essential that we find the willpower to look toward the future with optimism. What's more important is to recognize the inner humanity that lies in our shared commitment to morality, compassion, empathy, and the fundamental belief that we are all interconnected, regardless of race, borders, and ideologies. This will keep us away from dark scenarios eventually, just like Jeff and David taught us. Thank you very much. So now I turn to the first panel, will be monitored by my Brookings colleague, Dr. Tan, please, and with your fellow the panelists. Oh, before that, I forgot. Let's see three keynote, very brief keynote speeches by President Jing Liqun, by Susan Sontag, and the last one by Zhang Tao. And they're all traveling right now, in airplane and etc. So let's show the video. Sorry about this.
Chairman John Thornton, co-chair of the Board of Trustees for the Asian Society. Chairman Ronnie Chen, chairman of the board for the Asian Society Hong Kong. Mr. Li Chen, founding director of the Center on Contemporary China and the World. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to share some of my personal reflections in honor of my good friend, Dr. David Dollar, and equally remarkable American scholar and diplomat, Dr. Jeffery Bader. Both gentlemen were great scholars of high caliber who epitomized the essence of international cooperation and common understanding, upon which peaceful relations between nations depend. I'm speaking to you today from Beijing, the same city where some 20 years ago I first met Dr. David Dollar when he became the World Bank's country director for China, while I was a vice minister at China's Ministry of Finance and the World Bank's alternate governor for China. By the time David and I met, he had been engaging with China for some 20 years. Beginning with his study of Chinese during his undergraduate studies, David was also a visiting economics lecturer at the Chinese Academy of Social Science in the 90s. When he returned to China in 2004, in his capacity representing the World Bank, his exceptional expertise and his humble, fact-based approach to dialogue made him a trusted advisor and friend to many in my country. While he and I engaged across many issues, I'm particularly grateful for his astute and wise counsel during the early years of establishing the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. AIIB's rapid membership expansion to 109 economies today owes much to advice and wild advocacy of well-respected luminaries, David being one of the most influential. The modern governance features of this new MDB embodies many of David's astute recommendations. Another example is AIIB's inaugural General Counsel, Ms. Natalie Lichtenstein. An American with a 30-year legal career at the World Bank, Natalie's expert authorship of AIIB's Articles of Agreement and her long-standing reputation played no small part in the eventual decision of 57 economies to join AIIB as founding members. Trust lies at the heart of a well-functioning multilateral system, and such trust is ultimately attributable to the reputation of those who contribute directly or indirectly to the design and development of such an institution. In turn, this trust must be carefully maintained by those who run the institution as a team. Undoubtedly, our role models have set a very high bar for such entrusted custodianship. However, as long as we do our best as multilateral custodians to protect the integrity of an MDB's reputation, our stakeholders and shareholders have every reason to believe that the multilateral system has a great future ahead. As the Chinese national involved in Sino-US bilateral dialogues in economics and finance for the last 4 decades, I have tried to push for a sound, healthy, and mutually beneficial bond between our two peoples. I continue this even today as the president of AIIB without compromising my duty as an international civil servant. Over my career at the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Chinese Ministry of Finance, and private sector organizations, I've engaged with many American governmental institutions, regulatory bodies, think tankers, as well as financial institutions and businesses enjoyed meaningful cooperation. Recently, the relationship between China and the United States has become a little bit tough. Perhaps this is an understatement. Challenges that seemed temporary have turned out to be more formidable than expected. To a large extent, this is due to the fact that China is catching up with unprecedented speed across all the development indicators for modern nation. Understandably, such speed has unsettled some and very much worried others. Dr. Dollar and Dr. Butter were deeply informed and clear-eyed in their understanding of China. However, it is not easy for others to see the extensive opportunities that continue to lie ahead in China's rise, with the blur of national security concerns instead capturing attention in the foreground. While ongoing disagreements will continue to pose challenges, the need for cooperation only grows. Both sides must continue to do their very best to enhance mutual trust. Global economic integration has been one of the biggest drivers of improved living standards and poverty alleviation in human society. Economic cooperation and integration, particularly in terms of trade and cross-border investment between China and the United States over the last 4 decades, have allowed both countries to grow rapidly, with spillover effects benefiting the rest of the world. Now, these two countries, despite their differences, need to find new ways to cooperate. I am an optimist. I believe that we have seen worse times through recent history, still a living memory. We can look back to the time when people endured the decades-long Great Depression, which ended in 1939, and World War II, which ended in 1945, respectively, the worst financial depression and the worst armed global conflict in modern society. Yet, the international community pulled through. Global citizens of all nationalities built an infrastructure for cooperation that paved the path towards peaceful prosperity. One such piece of multilateral infrastructure materialized in 1944 at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, in establishing the rules that would govern commercial relations between the global financial powers. The global community forged the Bretton Woods Agreement. Each country adopted a monetary policy for external exchange rates, and soon after, the World Bank and the United Nations were established. Fast forwarding to today, despite bilateral tensions between shareholders, all the world's leading multilateral development banks are working together as the system. A very encouraging atmosphere never witnessed before. MDBs no longer view each other as competitors, but instead as essential partners in a daunting mission to mobilize ever more financial resources to fund humanity's moonshot toward net zero and the development pathway to prosperity that must accompany it. It is only through our strengthened bonds that we will safeguard hard-won development gains obtained over the last few decades. Progress is only achieved by civilizations working together over the longer term, by organizing of our efforts into collective projects rather than minimizing ourselves into the fragility of tribal factions and sectional interests. If people-to-people exchange fertilizes the soil of cooperation and common understanding, then the legacies of Dr. David Dollar and Dr. Jeff Butter show how green sprouts can subsequently grow over the decades into a protective forest that stands tall amid the erratic gusts of popular opinion that are fanned by tempestuous storms on social media that blow across both sides of a Pacific Ocean. With this insight in mind, I want to commend the Center for Contemporary China and the World and the Asian Society, Hong Kong, for organizing today's conference on Trans-Pacific Legacies. I hope that David and Jeffrey's remarkable individual legacies will continue to inspire the next chapter of Trans-Pacific Legacies that lie ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chen Li, for inviting me to join today's event honoring the legacies of David Dollar and Jeff Bader. Both are well known to those in China studies. I regret that I cannot join you and many other colleagues and friends in person as I'm traveling outside Hong Kong. But allow me to take this opportunity to say a few words. Many of us have met and worked with David in various capacities in the past decades. To me, David was not only a great colleague, a highly respected intellectual leader, but also a wonderful friend in the past 30 years that I have gotten to know him. David was a bridge builder throughout his life. Many of us have benefited tremendously from his wisdom, intellectual curiosity, and candor, and profound knowledge and deep understanding about China, the US, and international economics. I got to know David some 30 years ago when I started working for the World Bank in Washington, D.C. I was a junior staff, and David was already a well-established macroeconomist. With his unassuming manner, David was always ready and willing to listen and discuss issues, even on those that he had vast more knowledge and experience about. I worked with David more closely when he served at the World Bank's China country directors in Beijing between 2004 and 2009, and subsequently as the U.S. point person on economic and financial issues in the U.S.-China Strategic Dialogue team based in Beijing. By that time, I was working at the People's Bank of China. We continued to huddle, discuss, and debate issues, sometimes heatedly, but always constructively and always amicably. It was also during that time that David and I grew closer and became family friends, as the kids of our two families went to the same class and same school in Beijing. We bonded over our spare time activities and kids' education, something he cared about deeply. And I must note that his Chinese also got a lot better since then. Our connections continued and grew stronger after I moved to DC and started to work for the IMF, while David joined the Brookings at 1775 Massachusetts Avenue. In addition to exchanging views on US-China and global economic and financial issues at the Brookings or at the fund, we had more time to chat about life, family, and swap tips about where to find good and authentic Chinese food in DC metro area. David's passing was a blow to my family and myself as we lost a dear friend. Professionally, David's passing also left a huge void in US-China studies at a time when the trust-building spirit he had so ably embodied is in such high demand. I certainly hope the bridge he built and the path he traveled on will continue to inspire us all in the years ahead. The event today, the gathering of so many friends and colleagues, and the wonderful program that Professor Chen Li put together speak volume to the impact and the difference that David had made. He had touched many people's lives and made them, and made us, better individuals. For that, I'm forever grateful. Thank you.
Good morning to you all, and thanks for being here to remember and appreciate two giants in the field of US-China relations and two incredibly wonderful human beings. It was a great shock to lose these two pillars of our community back to back in October of last year. Our heartfelt sympathies go out to their families, to Rohini and to Paige especially. I know we all felt the strong partnerships that stood behind Jeff and David. I didn't know Jeff Bader and David Dollar as long as some others, but I was privileged to know both of them through the last 20 plus years of working on China in the US government and later. And they were tremendously helpful and generous to me. I miss them both every day. The name Jeff Bader was one of those hallowed senior Foreign Service names when I first came to the East Asia Bureau at the State Department during the Clinton administration. Jeff was already the top China hand in the U.S. diplomatic service at that time, and he was the person everyone wanted to emulate. Jeff was laser focused on how to realistically get things done that served the American interest. And he did. While others vied for the title of chief architect of the relationship, Jeff was busy as the pragmatic bricklayer, building the foundation steadily despite ups and downs. And by the time I began working on China policy in Washington, fortunately for me, Jeff was in the White House. I didn't understand at the time, but I do now, how important it is to have someone with both authority and wisdom passing along the guidance of the president and other senior policymakers. Jeff was living in California by the time I served in the Trump administration, but he was ever accommodating to my early Saturday morning phone calls to solicit advice. And after I left government, he continued to generously offer his mentorship and time for discussions with Chinese colleagues, even as his health and the relationship deteriorated. That Jeff was such an optimist, even as he saw clearly the potential for US-China tensions, should give us the confidence and inspiration needed to keep trying to solve problems and make improvements, and to bring the US and China back to a constructive path forward together. Now, I met David Dollar and his family while we were all living in Beijing. He was the expert's expert on the Chinese economy, and as country manager for the World Bank, someone everyone wanted to talk to. But more than that, David was a fixture of the local community, always active, patient, and kind. When I got back to Washington in 2014 to work on China again, David was at Brookings, and no one had more experience and credibility on China's economic picture than he did. Yet David was so open-minded and tolerant of dissenting views. And in his Dollar and Cents podcast, which was so aptly named, he never failed to explore all the angles. The last time I saw David was at Al Carberry's summer party in Georgetown. David had a crowd of groupies gathered around him to seek wisdom on China's economic prospects, which was so typical. The mentorship provided by David and Jeff was so powerful because you knew they were only trying to get the right answer. There was no ego or hidden agenda. They were realistic and advocated approaches that they thought were the best for America and for the world, a solution set that largely overlapped in their mind. As we make our way through our current difficult and self-deluding era, we have to continue to take inspiration from their example. I know I try to do that every day. Thank you all.
Truly remarkable videos by very influential figures in the bilateral relationship, not only past, but also present. And again, they talk about the strong bonds, people-to-people relations. So U.S.-China relations, not only state-to-state relations, but also people-to-people relations. As my Brookings colleague, Michael O'Halloran, recently said, and he will speak just in a couple of hours. I think that's so strong. I hope that the bond will continue. Even the relation, state-to-state relation, probably will experience some difficulties in the years to come, just like now. So we are going to take, again, thank you all, and President Jing Liqun, and my personal friend, and Dr. Zhang Tao, and also my personal friend, and Susan Sangton. And I hope that the audience here and others just enjoy your remarks as much as I do. And we will take a break. So we are a little bit late, maybe 5 minutes break, then we'll resume. Thank you so much. Okay.